friends, Ben here with Business for Unicorns, and today Pete and I are talking and asking the question of how simple should your business be? How many service offerings do you present to a client? How many do you even offer? What does that look like in the pricing conversation? And we come to a really cool action step on how to decide how simple your business should be so you can make it as easy as possible for people to say yes to the membership option that's best for them. Enjoy. Hey friends, welcome to another episode of the BFU podcast. Before we dive in, I want to remind you that if you're a gym owner with 30 clients or more, you've got a free opportunity to hop on a call with us. We call it a brainstorm call to help you get clear on where you want to go, what's working and not working, and what's getting in the way. And in full transparency, we do this because we know a small percentage of you are going to want help with the implementation to make that plan a reality faster and better than you would on your own. But even if you're not even remotely interested in that, you're just going to get a ton of value and some more clarity to work forward in your business. So if you're interested in hopping on a brainstorm call, click the link in the show notes, and you're going to have a ton of fun. So Pete, you've got a quote for us today.
Yeah, and staying with our 2025 theme of Pete's going to read his face off, got a new quote that I like from a recent book. I read the book called The Choice Factory, which I found interesting. It was published in the late teens, and it's, again, about behavioral science concepts. And I just came across a David Ogilvy quote that kind of explains why behavioral science exists, period. And it was, consumers don't think how they feel, say what they think, or do what they say. And I read that to you off the recording, and I could see on your face that you were triggered by it based on what I came to find out was a series of conversations with kind of coaching calls recently from people who declare that they are in search of simplicity, only to deliver the exact opposite message in the strategy that they propose to follow. And all I could say was, yeah, me too. I hear that all the time. So I'll allow you to explain why that one set you off a little bit.
Yeah, it's like, this is kind of close to home for me because my business was way too complex early on. And I mean, it probably still is in the grand scheme of things if you compare it to models like, Alloy or something like that. It's kind of the old thing, if you confuse, you lose. And if people are coming in, whether they're like prospects who are interested in signing up for your gym, or even existing members thinking about like changing their membership, and you have a myriad of options that all are kind of the same but slightly different. I'm speaking more from the Gen Pop lens. You can give the athlete lens. Like, Gen Pop don't know the difference between us and Planet Fitness. So to assume that they know the difference between small group and semi-private training, or even like small group and classes, or small group and one-on-one, or the benefits of custom programming versus, templated but progressed and regressed appropriate program, like, we just absolutely have the curse of knowledge. So when they're coming in saying, hey, my back hurts and I want to lose 10 pounds, I want to have more energy to play with my kids or grandkids, and we get into terminology like custom programming and semi-private versus small group, like, I'm in the industry and I'm already kind of getting bored of what I'm saying. I can only imagine how they're feeling. So it's, how do you present what you have that's different? And I think of it as going to like a restaurant with a million options. My favorite shawarma place in Guelph is called Ali Shawarma. I fucking love shawarma. Good God. I could eat that every day. I don't even know what I order. I describe what I want the food to look like in the container because the menu is so confusing to me. Half salad, half fries, chicken, extra white sauce. That's my go-to. It's the only thing I order, and I love it. Contrast that with going to a higher-end restaurant, and it's like, would you like the chicken or the steak? And it just makes it, even if I don't really want chicken or steak, I can decide in an instant. But every time I walk into Ali Shawarma, I don't even use DoorDash because I don't know what buttons to push on it. Every time I walk into Ali Shawarma, I look at the menu and be like, what the hell is the thing? I'm looking for the order that I want. And I'm like, can you just make the thing look like this? And they're like, oh yeah, that's a whatever. So anyways, I think I've said enough on this, but even if we think our pricing model and our options are relatively simple, like, put yourself in the shoes of somebody who last time they went to a gym was they went to Planet Fitness and got hurt and took 8 years off. They don't know what the landscape looks like.
I have to laugh because in my mind, I've been on calls with you for a long time now, like probably coming up on like 10 years or something. And in my mind, Guelph is like maybe a 5,000 person community. So hearing you use the term "my favorite shawarma place in Guelph," implying that there's about 10 of them that you're considering.
We've got a handful of shawarma places. Ali Shawarma. I was on a hunt for a while. This is a tangent. I was on a hunt for the best shawarma, and I thought I found it, and then I didn't. And it's actually Ali Shawarma, but that's beside the point. They've got.
Well, I'm glad you found the thing.
Yeah, you'll appreciate the branding. It's Harry Potter themed, but don't know why. But all they do, the only branding is they have the Harry Potter font on their sign, and I'm sure they didn't get permission to use that. And then when you walk in behind the counter, there's one of the flags for each of the 4 Harry Potter houses, and that's it. Nothing else has to do with Harry Potter. I'm like, I don't know what the hell's going on here, but y'all make good shawarma.
I have to assume that's ownership almost entertaining themselves. Like, for example, my colleague John, colleague and business partner, had an image where his dog's head was put on the body of a Game of Thrones character, and then he had it put onto like a canvas painting, and he put an example of it in my office one day just to entertain himself. And there's a strange Game of Thrones vibe all around us, but it's purely for his own entertainment. So that's how I imagine it at the shawarma place.
That's probably it, actually.
But circling back to your point about kind of this unnecessary complexity, I think of this as kind of understanding how we need to know our audience. Because if I talk to you or we're having a conversation on a podcast and I use a term like small group personal training or semi-private training or group training or adult fitness, I know that you know generally what I'm saying, but I can't use those terms when talking to a 15-year-old kid or to their dad. And so while I know I'm delivering what probably is, I'd say, meets the definition of small group personal training with individualized program design, I'm not saying that to a parent. I'm saying strength training for baseball players. Couldn't keep it more simple than that. And that connects with people. And if there's a follow-up question from them, well, how's it unique to my son? Or how are you thinking about the elbow injury he had? Or we got a diagnosis of Little League elbow a couple years ago, and that's terrifying to me. Or I heard about a kid 2 towns over who's having Tommy John, and he's only 14 years old. That allows me to get into the weeds a little bit with more nuanced terminology. But I don't default to that spot because talking about above people's heads doesn't close more business for me. It just confuses, therefore I loses. Is that a Donald Miller quote you dropped there? I
mean, Mark said it enough times it's burned into my brain, but I'm sure he got it from a marketer.
Yeah, I think I definitely encountered it on more than one occasion in building a story brand from Donald Miller, but it is accurate.
Well, and this is also kind of recency bias here, because when you presented in Toronto, you had showed your pricing sheet in one of your slides, and it was, correct me if I'm wrong, it was like assessment once a week, twice a week, unlimited.
You are correct in the components of it, but not the order. So the assessments first are LBO, but then I go unlimited twice a week, once a week. And I love that you use the term recency bias to open a conversation about a lecture that I gave on behavioral science, kind of nudges and tips, which is awesome. Recency bias kind of, to a degree, applies here because there's a concept of like anchoring that attaches people to price points. And part of the reason we want to open with the highest price point is so that even if somebody came in with the intention of only coming once a week because they're coming from far away, having seen $429 first, it makes that $249 a month once a week feel a lot more accessible. And there are plenty of different reasons to integrate behavioral science nudges into our pricing strategy. But that, from that perspective, you could argue that going with the high price first makes the lower price options more palatable. But the recency bias would potentially argue that making that high price point the first thing you see makes it the thing that you're attached to the most. And people look for shortcuts in their decision making. And oftentimes they get to a point where they're like, too much complexity. I'm just going to go with the first thing I saw. And so that's another reason to put the high price one up top. But again, so many biases, so many little mental shortcuts. We are unintentionally using ourselves to make decisions all day, every day. And that whole lecture was basically built on the concept that we can leverage these things for good as business owners with good intentions, help people make good decisions, not to manipulate them into like things that aren't in their best interest.
Well, hey there, Business of Unicorns podcast listeners. I'm just making absolutely sure you have already gotten your free, instantly downloadable copy of my new book, The Little Book of Gym Marketing Secrets. You can find a link to download it in the show notes, or you can go to gymmarketingsecretsbook.com. I worked super hard to make sure this is a less than 30-minute read and is a comprehensive overview of all the things you need to do to grow your gym, get more leads, more clients, and importantly, change more lives. Again, find the link in the show notes, where you can download your free copy at gymmarketingsecretsbook.com. And now back to the podcast.
Well, absolutely. And with that, the point I want to make is you're only showing them 4 things, one of which is the thing they are starting with. So after that, it's only, you've got 3 options. And I can say with full certainty that you're not just like, what do you want to do? You're guiding them based on the results of the assessment. But if let's add just like one layer of complexity. Let's say you've got the same 3 options, but now you have month to month and 12 months. If you show them 6 options, that's overwhelming. You can still guide them through the conversation. But then if you also have, you offer like, oh my God, I'm so bad at baseball, pitching stuff, and manual therapy stuff, like you got other options, but there's also the difference between what you show on the menu and what's available to offer. So there's kind of a balance here of, you want your business to be as simple as possible, and you want what you show to be even simpler than that. Of course you have those extra things, but if it's like, hey, there was a time in my business where we did 1, 2, and 3 times a week, 6, 12, and 18-month commitments, and I showed them all on one sheet. That means they had 9 options. That's overwhelming. Now we can guide them through, hey, based on the results of your assessment, blah, 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 I really recommend 2 days a week or 3 days a week for you. Which frequency feels better for you? And they're like, you know what, based on my schedule, I think twice a week is the right place to start. Great. Pull out the pricing sheet with twice a week on it. Are you looking to, I wouldn't say it exactly this way, but like, do you want to make a 12-month commitment and save some money? Or are you looking for the flexibility of month to month with that twice a week package? So now I've done 2 different steps, but at each step, there's only 2 choices. And I don't want to it's hard to do in a podcast to really explain the whole like nuance of like what you show them and what you tell them in a sales conversation. But that's a lot simpler than saying, here's all our pricing options, plus you can add on custom programming, plus you can add on Open Gym, plus you can add on the nutrition component. People are going to be like, chicken or steak? Which should I get?
Well, I love the way you position that, the way you set the table for that concept of, do you want the flexibility of signing for this month or this quarter, or do you want to save some money? As simple as it gets. I love that. And to build off of your point, even the most simple pricing systems can be complex and crazy really, really fast. Now, I could have a parent call me and say, I've got 2 kids. One's probably a little too young for this. The other one's right in the sweet spot, but maybe you think the young one should. Explain my options to me. And then I say, okay, we've got an initial evaluation for $99, but if you bring them both on the same day, I'll do a 2-for-1 scenario. But if they come on 2 different days, I have to charge you $99 each time. And then here's our once a week option, our twice a week, our unlimited option, if one of them signs up. But if both of them sign up, I'm going to give you our family rates, which are over here on this other sheet. And this is what the once a week, twice a week, and 3 times a week is. Now, I should mention that if one of them goes in season next month, I'm going to deflect the first one back to our standard pricing model, and we'll kick you back into the family rates when the other one comes out of the season and comes back in. And by the way, we have pitching instruction, and that's booked in 30-minute increments. But if you wanted, we could put 2 of them in the cage at once in a 45-minute block, and we'd modify the price point a little bit, and on and on and on and on. And that is, well, 1, exhausting for everybody involved, but 2, impossible to replicate for your team when they're not sitting in the room watching you crush that sales pitch over and over again. So even if I'm doing it with confidence, I know that the minute I'm not available to take a call because I'm on line 1 and line 2 rings, someone else is going to do their best to replicate that, and it's not going to be anywhere close. So I can't emphasize enough how important it is that you get all the options off people's radar and do exactly what you said. Sell them on day 1, get them in there for the screening, be it free, a discounted LBO, however you do it, and then prescribe. Don't just describe a full pricing model. Just say, here's what I saw, here's what I'd suggest, and don't give them one option, which is a topic that we covered in my presentation a few weeks ago, which is called Hobson's Choice, which you want to avoid. Don't just say you need personal training. It's $149 a session. And because in their head, they're just like, do I want to spend $149 for a 60-minute block, or do I not want to spend it? Whereas if you say, hey, I would suggest personal training because you got a unique injury history, and I think you could really benefit from the attention to detail. But if you're not in love with that price point, we have an alternative over here where I'm sure we could take good care of you, as opposed to the exercise that I just went through, demonstrating the nonsense that is mapping your whole pricing strategy.
Yeah. So, and you make maybe, because the question I was asking myself before we started this podcast was like, how simple should your business be? And maybe the answer is it's as simple as someone who's not you can present it to a prospective client.
Mm-hmm. And they can learn it in, I don't know, maybe a week of exposures, seeing you do it once to twice a day over the course of a week, and they can replicate it working off of some baseline SOPs. Like Eric has taken the time to write the exact script that he would like people to work off of as far as selling our business. But he's made it very clear, I don't want you holding that script when you do it. Read it as many times as you can, and then do your best to give your interpretation of that. But at the very least, he gives them a ton of specificity in their preparation, and then lets them kind of run wild based on how much preparation they did. Because we don't want to be robots in how we sell. Like I don't want somebody to very clearly be like reading off of a poster on the wall while giving the pitch over the phone. That's just the least authentic thing in the world, and it's so obvious to the person on the other side. But there's no such thing as too much prep work, if you ask me.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think there's something else around trying to give them 2, maybe 3 choices at each step. You might have 2 or 3 times that you give them 2 or 3 choices. Like, you wouldn't say it this way, but hey, do you want one-on-one or small group? They say small group. Great. Do you want 2 days a week or 3 days a week? 2 days a week. Great. Do you want month to month or 12 month? Again, you would make a prescription. You wouldn't literally do what I just said. But now you're walking them through those steps rather than being like, here's the menu at Ali Shawarma. What do you want?
Well, the beauty of it is there's a decision tree, but only one of you understands what that looks like during the conversation. But you get to the point where it's, if yes, go here. If no, go here. If yes, get here. All right, I know what my 2 to 3 options are to propose. Now let's give them a visual. And it's just important that we not give them a view of the whole entire root system of the tree, because that's just not good salesmanship.
Yeah, but I mean, we don't actually have a document for this in BFU, I don't believe, but there might be some value, listeners, if you're thinking through your sales process and how do you make it simple, because it's not always have less membership options or less, like, don't add the thing to your business. It's not that you shouldn't offer nutrition, it's just how do you position it. So there might be an exercise here of you should map out the flow chart of your decision tree of what that looks like, and at every step ask the question of like, is this too complicated? How am I positioning this? Is this making sense? Because I'm pretty confident you could take people through, 2 or 3 of those with 2 or 3 options and you wouldn't lose anybody. It's different when it's like exactly what you laid out. But if 2 of them come in and here's how the in season, like you can save a lot of that stuff for down the road as it comes up. If it even
that was the closest I think I've ever come to like a Mark Fisher rant, where I could just go and go and go and go and go and then be like, I'm going to pull up. I've done enough.
Well, it was point well taken, because I view your business as relatively simple, but you're right, there are those lots of moving elements, but none of that is presented on day one. They don't need to know everything you do. Like, there's the way you can describe everything you do and how you got to those decisions in the time it takes to do a sales conversation, and that's also not the point of a sales conversation.
Yep. All right, well, for the sake of simplicity, shall we kill it there?
Yeah. Flowchart your decision tree, everybody. See what it actually looks like, and then audit, should this thing stay, should this not, based on how simple is it for you to present, and could you get someone else on your team up to speed doing this in about a week?
I'd go so far as to say flowchart your decision tree, as you mentioned, and if you're proud of it, excited about it, or learn anything from it, send it to us because I want to talk about it. I'm interested in the learning experience that comes with this because I have not mapped it quite so specifically, but I agree with you that I think it's an exercise worth doing.
Well, Pete at businessforunicorns.com, Ben at businessforunicorns.com. Email us your flowcharts, friends. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, that's the one. And then sign up for the business masterclass and come talk to us about it in person.
Yeah, Rhode Island in May. It's going to be great.
All right. Good chatting as always.
Thanks, Pete. Appreciate your time.
Talk soon.